Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to Rainbow Body of Tibet and Resurrection of Jesus. So I have no idea what this is about, other than rainbow body, which my mind thinks of painting your skin a rainbow color. I mean, I don't know what else to think about that. Resurrection of Jesus, I guess, is that the Easter Sunday, I believe, was the reason for that? Or the reason for Easter Sunday is because that's the day that Jesus resurrected, which deals with bunnies laying eggs. I don't know. Anyway, let's just go to this video shot.
This is the story of a true miraculous occurrence. In 1998, reports were coming out of Tibet that a certain Tibetan monk by the name of Khenpo Acho had manifested the controversial rainbow body phenomena. This is a phenomena that's accepted in some schools of Tibetan Buddhism, but rejected in others. And basically what this is that for certain ascetics who have dedicated themselves to very arduous spiritual practices, they're able to manifest a dematerialization of their body after their death. And in addition to this dissolution of the body, other paranormal phenomena is also witnessed, typically of a luminous nature. Now, these reports had spread all over the world, and they eventually reached a Catholic Benedictine monk by the name of Brother David Steindl Rast.
Real quick with that one. Again, I don't just believe in anything. I mean, I think of all possibilities. That is it possible? Well, I don't know. To have a rainbow-colored body, I think that's what it is, or to your body to dematerialize. The closest thing I can think of that seems plausible that I've heard, and I don't know if it's true either, is spontaneous human combustion, where your body just catches fire. I've never seen it with my own eyes. I've never even seen a video recording of it. Of course, I don't think that'd be just available on the internet everywhere. And even then, you kind of have to question it because videos can be edited, tricks can be done through the video camera. So it's very, you just don't trust everything on the internet, obviously. But I don't know. I don't know if that is possible. I've heard even some doctors say maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So again, that's the closest thing I can think of. Just really weird stuff. So it's to say the disassembly of one's body through human combustion. If that's possible, then I could see that. Where basically your body just burns itself, then it becomes ash. Um, but again, I don't merely just believe in things. No, don't get me wrong. You can say like, "Oh, you believe in something." Say, yes. Is it probable though? That's the thing. Have I experienced something similar? How probable is it for it to exist or for it to happen? Things that are not just spectacular but very grounded to earth. Those can be somewhat easily believed, but still, no doubt to question. Everything. You don't believe in anything, but you can believe in certain things if you've experienced it. Genuinely.
Was intrigued by the phenomena and had wondered whether there could possibly be a connection between the rainbow body phenomena of Tibet and the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. In other words, perhaps understanding this phenomena in Tibet could help us understand what happened to Jesus. So he contacted his spiritual son and friend, Father Francis Tiso, who had studied Tibetan Buddhism and actually teaches Tibetan Buddhism at the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome. So he seemed like an ideal candidate to lead this investigation into the case of Khenpo Acho and the rainbow body phenomena. So Father Tiso happily agreed. He and several others did travel to Tibet in the year 2000 in the month of July, so literally just 2 years after this miraculous occurrence. And they managed to interview many people who had known Khenpo Acho and had actually observed the dying process. Now, Khenpo Acho was a very humble man, known to be very compassionate, and from youth he had dedicated himself to advancing himself spiritually. He had taken few disciples compared to other lamas, but he was known to be very attentive to the needs of the disciples that he did take in helping them advance spiritually as well. So he had lived in this very humble hermitage in the eastern part of Tibet, known as the Kanzi Gompa region, which is now a part of the People's Republic of China, known as the Sichuan province. So he had actually died in this very room. It is now turned into a shrine and in this box-like structure in the summer of 1998. So the witnesses that were present, and there were at least four people that were present to the dying process, and they said that he simply lied down um, in this box-like structure and began reciting mantras. And as he was reciting these mantras, his breathing became more labored and eventually stopped. Now, what was interesting is that they had said that he had no ailments, no problems, he wasn't sick, nothing was wrong with him that particular day when he had passed away. So it was unexpected when it had happened.
I guess you could say most death, generally speaking, it's unexpected. No one really expects when you die. It's like, oh, I got an expiration date here, I got about 5 minutes, so I better get this video over with before I die. But I mean, just to say it's a natural death, it seems like he just died of old age, which is a good thing. And not very many, well, I won't say not very many people, but at least maybe in the western parts. But it's great that at least they die of old age, not from some disease or accident or something. I think that's a good thing. I don't think he does. I'm guessing he didn't suffer at the very least. It's kind of hard to know. It's like, did you suffer when you died? It's like, well, you can't exactly ask him the question, but hopefully it was just a peaceful and calm death. But it seems like it. They said that he was breathing heavily. Um, I don't know what to think about that. I mean, I guess it's just difficult to catch his breath because he was dying, I suppose. But seems peaceful, and which is, I guess, a good way to die, I will say.
But they noticed that when he had died, almost immediately, um, the color in his skin returned. It almost looked healthier. They said that the wrinkles in his face had completely disappeared, and he was described as having the face of an 8-year-old. So they knew something unusual was occurring, and they sought the guidance of a local lama by the name of Lama A Kuyuga, who was the head of a local monastery. And he instructed them to place a yellow robe over the body of Khenpo Ho and to not spread the news that he had passed on. The concern was that if too many people knew, that it might, cause a disturbance. There's going to be a lot of people surrounding Khenpo Ho's house and whatnot. So they did not spread the news. So the news of his death was basically limited to a few in his inner circle. And so they followed through with this. They put a yellow robe over him, and they noticed that the bones in his extremities, in his arms and in his legs, began to shrink underneath the yellow robe. And they reported this also to the Lama, Lama A Kuiga, who said that they are not to look under the robe, they're to leave it over the body until 7 days have passed. So they observed this. And during this time, as the days were going on, the body was continuing to shrink. In addition, they noticed that there was no odor coming from the body. Instead, a fragrant, almost perfume-like smell was emanating from it, which is a phenomena that's also known among some Catholic saints as well when they die. And
Hmm.
they noticed that there were rainbows like over the hermitage that lasted for 2 days. The time when he died, the light from the sun appeared more coppery and different. And one of the practices in Tibet in these kinds of circumstances is to circumambulate or walk around the hermitage of the dead lama. So when his disciples were doing this, they would hear music, beautiful music coming from some unknown origin. So they would hear it coming from inside the hermitage, but when they went into the house, there was no one there. So there's this mysterious angelic music that's also connected with this. And they noticed this paranormal phenomena continuing as the body continuously shrank until day 7, when they lifted the yellow robe. The body was completely gone. There was nothing left of Kenpo Ho. Now, one of the interesting questions when it comes to this is that there was no embalming process. They didn't do anything to the body. Once they noticed that the body began to look more youthful, they knew something of an extraordinary nature was occurring, so they didn't do anything else to the body. And it's strange that no odor was emitted. The shrinking was also unusual, although it remains somewhat questionable because there was no direct observation of the body as it continued to shrink. So there are certain parallels between this event and what we know of, let's say, what's recorded of the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth.
So real quick, from what I know about this one, that I remember watching a long time ago, I think when they found his cloth, they allowed scientists to cut off a piece of the cloth at the edge, and I think the scientists dated it so early on, like I can't remember how many years, but it wasn't during the time of Jesus. It was supposedly Jesus' death. And then I watched a few videos, and they gave, well, at least one believer said that the cloth would fray or whatever. So sometimes over time, people would sew on new uh, cloth onto the old cloth to kind of renew it in some sense. And it's very much possible. It's very much possible that because it's the specialty of the cloth, that they would try to preserve it, and by just adding new cloth to the edges of it to try to maintain it. So that one is very probable. But they said that they took a snippet of it and said, this is all you're going to take. We're going to seal it up, and it will not. I think it won't be open again or something like that. So it's kind of sad that the scientists didn't get a good, I guess, a good cut in there, realizing that perhaps there was potentially newer cloth sewn into the edge of it. So now, is the cloth really as old as or during the time of Jesus' death? Don't know, because you can't. They won't allow them to carbon date it, and I don't necessarily disagree with them. The longer you keep exposing things into the air, it's the more it'll degrade. So I think they're just trying to preserve it. But I guess is it worth knowing the truth to the people who have this cloth? It doesn't matter. It is the truth to them, whether it is or isn't. It is to them. So I think it's always better to know. Because, could you imagine having this thing in your church, believing it to be true, and to only realize that it's not that old or something? But, it's up to them what they want to do with it. It's theirs now, and if they want to preserve it, that's perfectly fine.
And Father Tiso had actually written a book on this journey, which he titled The Rainbow Body and Resurrection, Spiritual Attainment, The Dissolution of the Material Body, and the Case of Kenpo Ho, which you can purchase and read into. It's very interesting. In addition to the life of Kenpo Ho, he also goes into other things such as Dzogchen, which is this non-theistic spirituality in Tibet and China, and how actually the rainbow body phenomena, or the doctrine of the rainbow body rather, might actually be the result of, let us say, a cross evolution between Christianity and traditional Tibetan and Chinese religions. So part of the book is dedicated to analyzing how certain forms of Oriental or Syriac Christianity, which were dubbed heretical in the western part of the world, moved eastwards across the Silk Road, and how they had a particular mysticism surrounded on light phenomena, and how this may have actually contributed to the doctrine of the rainbow body, which I thought was kind of interesting. It goes on to show how religious systems are living systems that develop themselves. But Father Tiso's ultimate conclusion was a bit inconclusive, or rather, he notes that there are parallels between the two, but ultimately it's hard to define because even our understanding of what the resurrection means is a bit mysterious.
Real quick before it keeps going on, I'll say about in terms of the Christianity towards the east. I've not heard much about that. Now, don't get me wrong. There is no doubt that Christianity tried to spread across the world. I couldn't quite understand what he was trying to get at, kind of maybe in that section, that past part, whether Christianity influenced the East or the East influenced Christianity. I wasn't too sure. I'd have to go back and listen to it again. But nonetheless, definitely, obviously, Christianity, Catholicism, all the religions in the West definitely was trying to spread as much as possible. So that is no doubt there. But it's interesting he's trying to link the two, especially Tibetan Buddhism and the resurrection, because I don't know the exact date of when Jesus died. Maybe zero. 80? Yeah. Maybe 080, I think that's what I've heard. And then you look at when did Buddhism start? I'm not exactly sure when that started either. I don't know if it's older than Christianity or younger. And then I don't know exactly when Hinduism started, Buddhism started. I know Hinduism first came. And so Hinduism is older than Buddhism. So, and that's the only reason why I say I don't know how old Buddhism is, whether it's older than, say, the death of Jesus Christ. I'm not sure. Again, none of my classes taught Hinduism or Buddhism per se. Now, I did take a world religions class, but I don't remember when they say Buddhism started. But because the things that I remember there was very, very vivid, which is essentially life is suffering, and give it 110% and expect nothing from the results. That has always stuck with me. But everything else about the pillars, the four pillars, I understand it to some degree. Because that's something a bit difficult to grasp. But the thing that was so simple to grasp was life is suffering, and give it 110% and don't expect anything from it.
You can tell St. Paul in his epistles, when he speaks of the resurrection, that he almost struggles to find words, and sometimes he uses contradictory terminology, ultimately settling for the phrase spiritual body, which is, again, it's somewhat clarifying, but also leaves a lot of ambiguity and mystery when it comes to Jesus. So there's a possible connection, but Father Tiso conservatively leaves it open, and he gives options for further studying. But I think what I found fascinating about this case is, of course, that a non Catholic had reached a very high state. And being someone that was more of a traditionalist Catholic, we have to recognize that non Christian religious systems do have certain means and paths available to them to permit their adherents to attain high statuses of spirituality. And I think just looking at Kempo Ho's life, he must have been such a human being. He must have fulfilled what we in the Catholic tradition refer to as a saint, for him to have manifested such a miraculous sign.
I have to rewind that one. I have to rewind that one. That hold on, what? Okay, we're almost there. Okay.
But I think what I found fascinating about this case is, of course, that a non Catholic had reached a very high state. And being someone that was more of a traditionalist Catholic, we have to recognize that non Christian religious systems do have certain means and paths available to them to permit their adherents to attain high statuses of spirituality.
So to me, that sounded like I didn't realize that people who are not Christians could attain such levels. That's what it sounded like to me, which is, I mean, I guess maybe if you live in a very small bubble, I guess, and only obviously being taught that only Christians or only Catholic can attain such spiritual status. Okay, I guess you would be surprised that, non-Christians, non-Catholic can attain the same thing or maybe even higher. You'd be like, oh my gosh, how did that non-Christian get that status? It's like, I don't know. I find it kind of weird. I've been tainted by Western religion, and I used to believe in such a thing because it did come over to my birth country. It was, I don't want to say which one. But anyway, so I did in some degrees believe. I don't know what I was though. But and then as I grew up, I started questioning it a little bit, but not so much. And then as I got to teens through college years, at that point, I actually late teens and right before college, like a few years before college, is when I realized I'm essentially it's atheist or agnostic, whichever you prefer. But I'm not going to choose to believe or think there's a God out there. Is it possible? Sure, I guess maybe. There's no way, no, for sure. So if that's agnostic, then it's agnostic. But it's really weird to say that. To say that. That's how I at least understood it. And don't get me wrong, I can't blame the dude if he was just in a bubble, on his own to see that. Like, he's surprised that other non-Catholic or Christian religion can obtain that. I can't blame the guy if it's in a small bubble, but it's kind of weird at the same time. It's like, why do you think that? Why do you think only Christians or only Catholic? But then you got to think about the Western religion, which says that only their religion is right. So it makes sense that makes sense that he believes that only Catholic or Christians can attain such a level. I can't blame the dude. You just gotta, he's been brainwashed to some degree in terms of the religion for him to think this way. To say it's like, non-Christians can attain such spirituality. I'm not saying he's brainwashing everything, but at least we can clearly see here that there was a degree of brainwashing that thinks that only Christians or Catholic can obtain high status of spirituality.
And I think just looking at Kempo Ho's life, he must have been such a human being. He must have fulfilled what we in the Catholic tradition refer to as a saint, for him to have manifested such a miraculous sign. And so I think it's a very interesting tale, how a particular doctrine, which may have actually been the product of an evolution of a, quote, heretical form of Christianity interacting with Buddhist as well as Dzogchen mystical traditions, that gave rise to this doctrinal idea of a rainbow body phenomena being possible.
Okay, so this is what I thought I heard earlier, but I wasn't too sure because I said I was going to rewind it, and it looks like he said it here again. We're saying the only, as far as I can understand, the only reason they can attain this was because of a heretical Christian or Catholic. Heretical,
Heretical form of Christianity.
heretical form of Christianity. If it weren't for that, perhaps these people, the Tibet Buddhism, would have never obtained that. I think, if I'm hearing that correctly. Here we go.
Or doctrine which may have actually been the product of an evolution of a quote heretical form of Christianity interacting with Buddhist as well as Dzogchen mystical traditions that gave rise to this doctrinal idea of a rainbow body phenomena being possible, and that this cross evolution opened a path for it not just being something of a theoretical nature, but of an actual nature. And I just find that to be very interesting, that kind of living manifestation of religious evolution. But what has to be interesting is that Father Tiso had interviewed a Lama who said that, you know, the rainbow body phenomena can happen, but it's rare. The other case prior to Kempo Echo was 150 years before him. So this is certainly not something that happens frequently. But Father Tiso asked that, you know, if someone can actually practice to attain this, how long does it take? And he was told that it takes 60 years. So if Jesus of Nazareth did attain the rainbow body, then he would have done this in half the time, which is something worth pondering about. Religious evolution.
Wait, what? Where did he come up with this answer? Like, oh, if it was Jesus, it would been half the time. Why? Just because he's Jesus? Hold on.
Father Tiso asked that, you know, if someone can actually practice to attain this, how long does it take? And he was told that it takes 60 years. So if Jesus of Nazareth did attain the rainbow body,
Okay.
then he would have done this in half the time.
Okay, I think. Okay, I wish he would explain why, or why he thought it was half the time. I think the perhaps. Well, I can only make one assumption as the reason why he would do it half the time was the fact that he had come to this realization in his life, later in his life, that he needs to do this. So he has a limited amount of time to do this, as opposed to someone who started this at the very beginning of their life and then having the time to do it, like, I don't know, properly or slowly or something. 60 years to do this. And if imagine you're 30 years old right now, well, you don't, I mean, I don't know if you have 60 years to live, so you want to cut that, you want to try to cut that down in some time. That's the only reasoning I can think of Jesus needing to do this in half the time. But I don't know if that's what he's saying, or is he saying because he's Jesus, he can do it in half the time? That's kind of, I mean, it's clearly he's coming from a Catholic perspective. And I have to understand from his perspective. This is how I always do. I try to do everything. I try to very hard, because I have to understand where he's coming from, and I can't blame him for certain things that he's kind of blind to, or perhaps he may be open-minded, but it's just that he hasn't really explored other avenues or anything. So I would question him, obviously, just to see why he does these things before I just say, oh, he's just being arrogant or something. Oh, because they believe Catholicism or Christianity is like the supreme religion of the world. I wanna be fair to him and say, okay, why do you think this? Why do you think that? Why do you think it's a heretical Christian belief system that made it into Tibet Buddhism that allowed the person to obtain this rainbow body? Why do you not think that maybe Buddhism alone could obtain this body? Or do you think only the Christians and Catholics could obtain this body, attain the rainbow body? I'd ask him that first before saying that he thinks that Christianity or Catholicism is the supreme religion. But it does sound like that, and I don't blame him if he's a devout Christian or devout Catholic, because obviously if you go in a religion, if you go to religion, if you follow a religion very strongly, you will have that belief. So it's innately built into people who believe in their religion. So can't blame him necessarily for that, but I would question his beliefs. That's all. And again, I have. But I mean, rainbow body. That's very interesting. I believe that happened? I don't know. I can't. It doesn't. It's not anything that I've ever experienced. Not everything. Not anything I've ever seen in science. So, do I believe it? No. Do I think that can it happen? I don't think so. That's not how bodies decay. So it's very, very odd. Um, Now, again, the same thing with spontaneous human combustion. I don't know if that's even real. I need to Google that now. Just because I've heard of it, it seems so odd. Is it possible for the human body to combust? Now, hey, look, if you know that's a meme or a joke, I haven't looked that up in a long time, so I could be looking like a complete idiot here. Very possible. So I definitely have to look that up. But and it's pretty. It's I guess kind of a little bit of a shame that when the scientists did cut the cloth over here, that they didn't. Obviously, you don't want to cut too deep into it because you want to preserve it if it's real. But cut enough to get, I guess, the deeper portion of the cloth. Sorry about that. And so that to know if it is old enough, because I guess for me the truth matters a lot. And if this is just fake, and you're sitting there worshiping it, that's kind of a big blow. You're you are falsely worshiping a false idol. You're worshiping a false idol in a sense, if this is in fact false. And again, this is I think you're not supposed to worship any other god other than God, which is kind of weird because they worship Mary in Catholic and Catholicism, I believe, and in Jesus as well. So I don't know. I don't know how that stuff works. But anyways, very interesting, a little odd. I never heard about this, honestly. Again, I highly suggest people to never just believe in anything. So I mean, you can if you want. I'm not going to sit there and say you can't. But for me, that's my policy. If it's probable, yeah, I can believe it to some degree. I'm not going to say it's fact, though. It's like, if you say, someone human combusted, I was like, well, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. I don't know if it's real. Even if I saw like a doctor says, yes, human can combust, I'd be like, I still don't know, because it's not something that occurs every day. It's not something that's very common. And to have one incident of it, just to say a human combusted, I still like, I don't know. So again, even things in modern times, I don't just auto believe it. I guess I'm just defending myself here. But anyways, rainbow body of Tibet and the resurrection of Jesus. And let me know what you guys think about this one. Again, this was just well, someone knows, and yeah, interesting. Hard to believe for sure. I mean, obviously, we see death, and for our body to shrink and then to disappear is something that I don't think anyone has seen. As a matter of fact, let me know. Have you seen? Well, I guess based on what they said here, it happens. The last one that happened was 150 years ago, prior to this person. So it's not something that happens very often. So it's going to be very difficult to believe, because again, it's something that happens very rarely. Very rarely, 150 years. Well, at least the two that's known, I suppose. The one that's 150 years ago, and then this one of the llama here. And if those are the only two that ever happened throughout history, then it's very difficult to believe, because it's, again, there's no way to witness it in a sense. You have to take the word of people in the past, and we don't know if they're truthful or not. So, and I'm sure people will defend, like, Tibetan monks are very truthful, but I don't know that. You can even say that I'm a liar, and that's perfect. That's honestly perfectly great. Don't believe in anything I say. That's a good start already. But yes, Um, I guess that's all I really have to say about this one. Again, let me know what you think about what he said as well about in terms of the heretical Christian beliefs that made it to the East and everything else I suppose I said in this video. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.